Alright, so I apologize for not having uploaded a video in the last couple days. Been really busy. Haven't really had time. So the daily part of the title is not necessarily correct. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to keep up to doing them every single day. But I'm going to try to upload them as soon as I can. Anytime I do anything. Okay, so that's out of the way. Today, we're going to be doing alignment basics. I had a lot of people ask me for an alignment video, so there it is. First, we're going to go over all of the basics of alignment. So all of the terms that we're going to need to go over first, just before we get into any theory and anything more complicated. Just so you understand exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, so the first one that I'm pretty sure everybody understands is camber, all right? Due to stance nation and all of those guys going for in ridiculous amounts of negative camber, I think everybody kind of understands what camber is anymore. All right, so camber is basically where your front tires, it's the lean of the front tires either in at the top or out at the top, basically. It's the camber that they're given. That can be either negative or positive. Negative camber is where the tops lean inwards. Positive is where the tops lean outwards. Fairly simple. Camber has its uses. It can be done excessively and it can be done, not enough. There's tons of different ways to set up a car with camber. Most of the stance cars that you see with ridiculous camber, well, it's ridiculous and it doesn't really serve any other purpose other than pure shock value. All right, and then you have caster. Now, this is probably the least understood of any of the front-end alignment stuff. Caster is essentially the wheel's willingness to go in a straight line. And the reason why that's important is because a good portion of your self-steer and your feedback and also the resistance to the wheel to turn is derived from caster. It also has a lot to do with the stability of the car. Now, what caster is the steering axis, all right, where the steering axis inclination is, all right, so steering axis inclination is a different thing, but anyway, it's the steering axis. You draw a line from the top of the steering axis through the bottom of where the ball joint is on the wheel, or the actual steering axis. It's lean. You draw a line from that to the ground, all right, and it's the difference between that line and the center of the wheel up and down is your caster angle, all right, and it's basically it creates a trail. Right, it makes the wheel, because the further forward this point is on the ground for where it intersects, the more the wheel is going to want to go in a straight direction and not want to turn. It's essentially being drugged by this point. So you have the dimension from here to the center. The further forward this line intersects with the ground, the more caster you have. It almost doesn't really matter how far your steering axis is leaned. The lean isn't necessarily that important. What matters is just where the steering axis is. Now, a good example of this is that you can actually put your strut. All right, let's put a strut here. So say your strut's mounted ahead of your wheel. Say it's mounted ahead of your wheel. Well, but it's mounted vertical, straight up and down. Your caster, some people would think because the strut's not laid over at a lean that you would not have any caster, and that would be terrible. But because of the fact that the actual center line for where the wheel rotates, right here, is back here, and then your steering axis would be here, you still have a considerable amount of caster. There's still a large portion right there. So that's what caster is. Caster is pretty important. And then toe. This is probably the most understood of any alignment thing. It is simply, when viewed from above, see, this is the front. When viewed from above, it is the relation of the front of the tires towards each other. Zero toe is both wheels straight ahead. So we're going straight ahead, all right? No difference between them, all right? Toe in is where the front of the tires are pointed in towards each other, and then toe out is where they're pointed out away from each other, right? And there's benefits to either. Most cars come from the factory with a little bit of toe in, right? Typically between like 1/4 and 1/8 of an inch, and total toe. And the reason why is because it promotes stability. It promotes the car feeling very stable, along with caster. Caster and toe work together to create stability. Most guys who autocross will actually run toe out in the front, all right? And then that, because of the fact that you are constantly generating a slip radius towards a direction, makes the car more responsive. It makes the car feel less stable, and it can make the car a little twitchy. But for performance use, it's very useful. Drifting as well. A lot of guys who are drifting run a small amount of toe out in the front, typically 1/8 inch to 1/4 inch toe out. 1/4 is pretty excessive, honestly, for toe out in the front. But there's some people who like the extremes and they want to get all the way out there. 0 toe is typically your regular everyday performance alignment. So guys that run track days, guys who want to turn lap times around a road course or anything like that, a lot of times they'll be sitting at right around 0 toe in the front, because you don't have the understeer associated with too much toe in, and you don't have the nervousness of toe out. But here's the thing though, at 0 toe, just because of the road force going along, it's going to want to push the front tires out, because as you're going, that the road force is going to want to push the front tires out. So any play that's in your steering, any play that's in your rack, any play that's in your tie rods or your outer tie rods, any of that stuff is going to make the front wheels point slightly out. And that's why some people will run a small amount of toe in. Anyway, that's just an explanation of what these terms mean. All right? So that's alignment. We're going over the front. And now let's go into the drifting part of it. Okay. Camber. All drift cars have tons of negative camber in the front. Why is that? Why do people run crazy negative camber in the front? Well, for one, there actually isn't really a huge performance advantage to excessive negative camber. I'm talking like 6-7 degrees. Some cars you'll see with 6-7 degrees. But a lot of it, the reason why it happens is because of the fact that they're running extended lower control arms. And the extended lower control arms push the wheels out. Well, the strut tops stay stationary and the wheels get pushed out. So what ends up happening, kabam, negative camber, tons of it, right? That much negative camber doesn't really have an advantage. Most of the time, a lot of guys are actually just trying to dial it out, because it really hurts your straight line steering performance, and it makes the car pretty twitchy, and it also wears the hell out of your front tires. There's some aspects of it that might be beneficial, as in like at full lock, you might the wheels, if you're running a lot of caster, it can kind of help with them being run over on their sidewall as they turn. So like your front wheels are going to go like that. And it can help the lead wheel stay not ridiculously leaned over. So typical drift alignment, we want to be right like 2.5 to 4. 2.5 to 4 degrees negative. Anything more than that is just ridiculous. Like it doesn't help. A little bit of negative camber, as in like -2 to like -4, can be very advantageous because it helps a lot with turn, and it helps a lot. So caster is one of the least understood steering alignment variables in the front for a drift car, because it really depends on feel. It depends on what you like. It's a lot of personal preference. There isn't really a real optimal thing that works for every car. Some cars you can't even dial in more than 5 degrees of caster because of the fact that there just isn't enough adjustment, right? So most caster is done on a strut type car by moving the strut back, right? But it can also, on certain cars, you're able to move the control arm forward. So like on an E36, where you have a pivot point, because it's an L, since the pivot's here, right? Oh, fuck. There. Since the pivot's here on the subframe, and then this is, say, your wheel, right? And then, so if you move this out like that, you're going to reduce caster. If you move it in or towards the outside of the car, then you're going to increase caster because it's going to move that forward ball position point, forward, which is going to angle your steering axis. It's pretty cool. But the thing is that that's just personal preference. Where do you like it? How much steering feel do you want? How much steering effort do you want? How much are you willing to let the wheel roll over when it turns onto the sidewall? It's all a balance between all of these things. All right, now toe, like I said before, a lot of guys who drift run toe out. Why is that? Why would you run toe out in the front? Toe out is going to make the car sketchy, man. It's going to make it real skittery. Well, toe out is a way, at least in a competition or a track-only car, to generate slip angle. Tires need slip angle in order to produce meaningful amounts of grip. We're looking at maximum grip on a tire is produced at 7 degrees of slip angle. Slip angle is the direction that the wheel's going versus the direction that the car is going, right? Now, when you run toe out, you're always generating a small degree of slip angle because the car is going straight and the wheels are pointed this direction. So you're always constantly have that slip angle always generated. So as soon as you juke the wheel or start turning in a little bit like that, it causes the car to respond quickly, right? That's what's great about toe out. That's why a lot of autocross guys run it, and that's why a lot of drift guys run it. Because you want that real responsive, like snap. As soon as you get into the steering, it's there. It's just like, I'm going this way. I'm going this way. But at the same time, it's one of the reasons why the car feels kind of skittery. When you're driving on the street in a car with a lot of toe out, it's real darty. It wants to just kind of like grab every little imperfection in the pavement or every tiny little move that you make in the steering. It's like, oh, whoa, we're going that way. So, yeah, that's one of the reasons why a street car, typically you don't run a lot of toe out. For a dual-purpose setup, I say, if you're going to be driving the car primarily on the street and you're going to be doing drift days every once in a while, set it up with zero toe. You're going to be fine with zero. Not a big deal. That's what I do on my car. It works. Is it optimal? Yeah, if you're running mostly competitions and stuff like that, you're going to want to run a little bit of toe out just because it's going to help you. It's going to help you get those real quick, snappy transitions. And the other thing, too, is that actually a little bit of toe out kind of has its own little Ackerman effect. Because if you figure it, like we talked about in the Ackerman video, which maybe I'll put an annotation up here, maybe I won't. We'll see. But as we learned in the Ackerman video, the difference between running a little bit of toe out, as you turn, it's like adding a slight amount of positive Ackerman. So, if you're, say, running a kit that is parallel steer, right? You're running something that's parallel steer. You don't like parallel steer, okay? Well, here you go. Here's your fix. Run a little bit more toe out. You run a little bit more toe out, now you've added some positive Ackerman because now this wheel is not going to turn quite as much as the other one because it's already sort of tilted that way to begin with from the beginning. All right? So, recap. Camber. You can have a lot, but you can also have way too much as well. Anything above -5, pointless. Doesn't really help you. -4 is still a little bit excessive, but sometimes you don't really have a lot of choice. Caster. A lot of caster is good. You can have too much though. Too much caster, you're gonna be riding on the sidewall on your tires at full lock. Toe. Competition, run some toe out. You're running on the street, zero. It's good. Most factory cars are a little bit towed in. If you don't drift and you just want a nice stable car to drive regularly, add a little bit of toe in. Not going to hurt you. Anyway, that's it for the first bit of this alignment video. Or not first bit, the first edition because I'm going to do a rear alignment video too, and that one's going to be a little bit more complicated. Because rear alignment, there's so many types of rear suspension in rear-wheel drive cars that it becomes it's a little bit hard to actually digest it down into different types, into general information. So anyway, if you like this video, please subscribe. If you don't like the video, okay, cool. You can do whatever you want. That's fine. Don't like my video. I liked your video.